mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. My guest today, larger than life, Dr. Eugene Manley, stopped by the show. He grew up in Detroit with asthma, anaphylaxis, and a healthcare system that pretty much treated his family like a nuisance. And then he answered all of that by becoming a mechanical engineer, a biomedical engineer, and a molecular biologist. This man has earned 3 degrees before most people know what they want to be when they grow up. He built something called STEMM with 2 M's, science, technology, engineering, math, and medicine. STEM pipelines for kids who never get a break. He fights for equity in lung cancer. He launched the STEM and Cancer Health Equity Foundation, and he's currently dragging institutions into reality. Eugene has survived medical racism, academia, and Mount Sinai Queens with a horror story that's totally worth listening to and unsurprisingly real. He also earned a black belt before blowing out his ACL mid-throw. He loves throwing people. We'll get to that later in the show. And now he runs national summits, he rewires systems, he mentors kids, and somehow still considers that a normal week in his life. Eugene is the rare guest who arrives over-credentialed, over-prepared, and ready to shame the entire industry with work ethic alone. My name is Matthew Zachary, and this is Out of Patience. Fun fact, I'm 51 years old, my second Eugene ever.
What?
Yes.
And I'm not that much younger than you.
No. My first Eugene is a PTSD story from first grade. Ooh. That no one really knows. Why would they know that? And I made a best friend in first grade named Eugene Ohm. We called him Oriental back then because that's what it was. It was the fucking 80s. So he was like, I'm from the Orient. Okay, great. Eugene Ohm. I don't know if he listens. I haven't seen the guy since 82.
Oh,
but
my.
you make a best friend at a brand new school in first grade. And then he fucking moved to Long Island. And I never saw him again. I was heartbroken that this kid I met, my best friend, Eugene Ohm, went to his birthday, came to my birthday. I have vivid, weird, memories of Eugene Ohm.
Aww.
And I grew up on Staten Island in the 80s when it was habitable. So just for asterisk there, like the island, yes, Stench Island. And he moved away. So you are my second Eugene. Do not disappoint me.
Well, I hope to not give you PTSD.
We have something in common, which is asthma as a kid.
Yeah.
But mine was an excuse because I grew up on said Staten Island, and the garbage dump, the infamous garbage dump, was a magnificent, I don't know, let's just say incubus of plague.
Yeah, I don't know what triggered mine. I mean, I grew up in Detroit. I mean, we were poor, but my dad was a chronic smoker, and I knew where he was, but he was out of the house by the time I was 3. But I think we still saw him, but I think maybe the smoking exposure just somehow overreacted in my body because I'm the one who had all the allergies in the family. I had the anaphylactic allergies, I had the asthma, and when you have asthma, anaphylactic allergies, it is never a fun combo.
No, and these are the days way before EpiPen.
Yep. And so I was in the hospital probably 20 to 30 times a year with my asthma just till I was about 10. And I still have my asthma. Thank goodness it's under control now.
Well, I mean, modern medicine, right?
Yeah.
But it took 40 years.
Yep. Because the asthma medication we have in it was not great. Slofulin, I don't even remember these names. But when you're a kid and you have to take
the puffy thing.
Yep,
like from Goonies.
Albuterol and stuff.
The kid from Goonies had the puffy thing.
But when you're a kid, when you have to take so many meds, people don't realize. A kid, you remember everything because you have to. It's your life, your routine. But when you don't have to take, you don't think about it.
Right. Now, Detroit in the 80s, right? That's RoboCop shit.
Yeah, that was it was rough. It was rough. I
mean, it's rough now, but by comparison, right?
Yeah, but at least downtown is booming. It is. From when I grew up, downtown is night and day. You actually can go down there and stay, and it's its own little Manhattan in downtown.
I mean, it's not Wakanda yet, but it's getting there.
But I mean, when I saw bike lanes, I was like, huh?
Bike lanes.
I saw bike lanes maybe 10 years, like, what city am I in?
It's like when they changed the street lights to lampposts. I lived in Hoboken for a stint in the late 90s after I was sick, and they didn't have like lampposts yet. They had street lights. And then they started like paving the pedestrian walkways with brick, and then the lampposts went up, and you knew right away something's going on.
Yep. But yeah, so Detroit growing up was very interesting because we were all over there poor. It was, everyone was collectively poor, and my goal was just to get through. I think maybe only 3 or 4 other people out of my neighborhood got out of it. You just saw a lot of crime. You heard a lot of shooting. You saw a lot of drugs. It was the crack pandemic. The house next door burned down with a hot plate. So it was crazy times.
Yeah, I hear you. And the movies reflected it too at the time.
Yep. Sometimes art imitates life, or whatever that saying is. Well, yeah.
And I mean, I feel like you've had a sort of a variant of Neil deGrasse Tyson in your DNA since you were a little kid. Is that accurate?
Yeah, but
maybe Carl Sagan back then.
Well, I wouldn't say. I'm not going to talk about space. That's not my space. Oh God, that was such a cool thing. I slipped into saying.
You did a good job there.
That wasn't even intentional.
But I mean, like, just this penchant for curiosity in the sciences.
But I think part of that was because I was always sick and in the hospital. And I got used to needles and nurses. I'd probably be the only kid in the hospital where they would come with a needle. I'm like, okay. The only thing you could not do to me was if you wanted to take blood with the prick, the metal prick.
Yeah.
Then you'd get me acting like a fool. Like, nope, don't touch me. Everything else, no problem. But but
you went numb to everything but the pinprick.
Yep, it was. Oh, you could still to this day. Nope. I don't ever want to be a diabetic. Like, no, please let me not ever get there.
No. One of my favorite things about what I discovered in my spelunking of you was your Village Voice article.
Oh,
and
my God.
For those that don't know, besides look it up, kids, the Village Voice was like the de facto cultural touchstone, Rosetta Stone of Manhattan culture for like 40 years. And it's long gone. It was like, if you know, you know. How, first of all, did you get yourself in the Village Voice? Because that's got to be a story.
There is a story. I was working with a marketing group, and they said, well, let's see if we can get you in some publication. So there's a fee, but you get, and they try to find articles, different places to get you in. And so the Village Voice said, let's pick up an article. And so we wrote it, and they edited, and then went back and forth, and there it was.
I mean, it kind of really spilled the tea on your entire backstory.
But it really did. It was a well-written piece. Even I was shocked by how it came out. And it was my story.
And like, who is this person you're writing about? Yeah, I've seen those.
But, sometimes when you're so busy doing this stuff, you don't really think about what you're doing. As odd as that sounds, you're just...
Right.
My whole thing is, what can I do? What can I learn? What can I do that's different? And then the other part of me is, how can I help people? And, and I've always just traveled through different paths, and no one told me to make these paths. But also when you're ADHD, you never fit in the box anyway.
Well, back then, those 4 letters weren't an acronym in the 80s or the 90s either. We were just like kind of, I don't know, gifted, I guess.
Yep. And then, or you were the troublemaker or noisy, and there was no meds. There was no, you didn't have anything.
Just walk it off. Breathe some air. Play with a stick. Eat some dirt.
Yep. And so, and then, when you finally get diagnosed in college, you're like, oh, it makes so much sense.
Well, it's also quite nice to know that there's nothing wrong with you, and that this is just who you are. But
it's so tricky when you work and go through different spaces, whether academic or nonprofit or industry, and they want you to fit in this box of what is normal. But when your brain is already 10 steps ahead, and then you are so hyper focused, it's like my job is like, tell me what you need done, when you need it done, and then just let me be. Do not come in and try to put your spin on it and micromanage. The worst thing you do to an ADHD person is micromanage.
No, you got to be you.
We will fight.
Silo yourself.
Yep. So just tell me what you need and when, and we're good. But when you come and you got to do this and this, and I'm like, I don't need adult babysitters. I'm pretty good.
But I mean, in reading how you've been informed by, shit you couldn't control as a kid. Meanwhile, my first science project was like the typical baking soda vinegar volcano. And yours was based on nicotine and tar because of your upbringing.
Yep, and it may have been even early. That was the first real science fair project I submitted, but I think...
Wait, what was your hypothesis? That smoking is bad for you?
No, it was actually even more subtle. My question was like, which cigarettes had the greatest amount of tar and nicotine in them? And, and in the 80s, well, you could go to the corner store. They knew which kids were actually smoking and which one weren't. And they knew I had no lungs. So they're like, here, take your cigarettes, do your little study. And I have no idea where I got this kit from. I ordered some kit because, it was the 80s. We didn't have internet.
Yeah.
So some kit with a bulb and an apparatus. And it had this like filter. And then you get the single cigarettes. And then you do so many puffs with the bulb. And then you see how much residue was on the pad. And then you're trying to quantify this. And I think it was like Camels had the most. And it was so interesting. I guess I was a scientist before I even knew I was going to be a scientist.
Did you? I feel like there's a sitcom moment here, like a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air moment, where like your mom sees the cigarettes and thinks you're smoking.
That was not even an issue. My asthma was so bad. They knew I was not smoking. Was
there any like, what the hell are these doing in the house?
No, because she knew I got the kid and knew what I was doing.
All right, good. Advance notice.
They sort of just they knew I wasn't. They knew I had no lungs to smoke, so that was not even remotely.
Yeah,
remotely
good. Got to get that out of the way.
But I think the earliest thing, when I grew up, we had encyclopedias. Mm-hmm. And I remember...
I'm sorry, what was that word again?
I know, not Wikipedia. It was an encyclopedia.
Physical three-dimensional books that lived on your shelf, yes.
World Book Encyclopedia. Yep. And maybe must
collect the whole set.
Yeah, we did. And I think it might have been my third grade.
Maybe you had to buy them by letter.
Yes. And then...
You couldn't buy the whole... You had to buy them by the letter.
And my third grade, I think science teacher made us... We had to do something for science class. I have no idea why, but I was reading, I don't know, randomly where I found this encyclopedia. And the first project I ever did was, I think I made an electric motor with just the instructions from the encyclopedia. And I'm not sure if that's the one where I use it.
So you're Doogie Howser as well.
And I don't know if I use it to pick up magnets or not, but I definitely remember the shoebox and the wooden dowel and the big old, I think it was a 5-volt or whatever, the big gargantuan batteries was.
Yeah.
But I don't believe I can't remember. But that was actually probably the first science thing I did. But you never, when you're doing, you don't think you're going to be a scientist. Yeah. You think, okay.
The curious, divergent kid.
And I'm always sick in the hospital. Maybe I wanted to do something medical, but I just didn't know what.
Yeah. So we both had asthma as kids. We were both curious, rabble-rousing, divergent, I guess, weirdos that didn't know what to do with ourselves, but were ahead of our time. We both went to college for mechanical engineering.
What? Oh, yes. You went for ME? Oh, my God.
I gave up, though. You didn't.
Oh, man. I was supposed to go for bioengineering, and that's what my school recruited me for. But my school, you graduated with either a BS in mechanical, electrical, blah, blah, blah. You didn't do a BS in engineering. Yale, you do BS in engineering, but Michigan Tech, you don't. So you usually get a formal track. But when they recruited me, they said, oh, well, we have bioengineering. But when I got there, they hadn't had their program established yet. So it would have been a BS in engineering.
Right.
But you can't leave Michigan Tech with a BS in engineering and get a job. So I said, fine, I will opt into mechanical. And so I slaved. Well, and I got through it, but I was like, and in Detroit is all automotive, and I couldn't care for a car to save my life. So I was the rebel. I said, well, I'm fine. I'm going to do biomedical research every summer. So every summer I did some kind of biomedical research that was not engineering.
But you made it through.
Yeah, I did. And then I ended up doing a master's in biomedical engineering. And that's where the mechanics coming into bone and ligament, that made so much more sense to me. And then I was like, okay, I got this. And then I decided to go torture myself and go do the PhD. And then that was 9 years of molecular biology.
Yeah, you make everyone feel really lazy with all these degrees.
Well, I would say it was hard. It was a lot of work, a lot of long hours. I remember the one summer I was cranky because I think I was in the lab, 86 straight days. I was a very, very cranky person because I had no time because I was doing a study where I was given a drug and one drug had to be formulated like every 6 to 9 days, and then you were given another drug every 3 days. So it was not a lot of fun.
Yeah. I don't know how you do that shit. Like, we would look back and like, how the hell did we get through that stuff, right?
Yeah, and I almost quit my PhD like 3 different times. I was like, I'm done with this crap. And then I was like, God, I'm so far in. I might so just, and then I finally just like, let's just get it done.
You pushed it out like a kid.
Yep.
And you held your degree in your hand and said, what the hell am I going to do with this?
Yep, I got that because I tore my ACL right before that last year of that PhD. So I had surgery, was doing rehab, and it was rough.
Were you hiking the Himalayas? So, like, give me a fake story why you broke your ACL.
You want the fake story or the real story?
Well, it surprised me. I will guess whether it's fake or real. Make it up. Or tell me the truth.
Well, the real story is...
I'm not going to guess then if you tell me it's the truth.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely not hiking. Real story, I was doing at jiu-jitsu practice, and we were getting ready to prepare for my black belt exam, which was going to be like 2 weeks later, and like... For the previous year, I had been hearing like just my knee just wasn't feeling right, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And then we were pretty much almost done with practice like 2 weeks before the exam. And I had like, we were doing one throw and I'm like, and I have to jump, put both my feet on the other person's hip and then, sit down and then throw them over behind me and then roll over and choke them. But I never finished the jump because as I started to jump, I heard this pop in my knee and I went down on the ground. And that was a torn ACL, but I didn't realize it was torn. And so I went to my friend's house. We had, just some food. And then I tried to get back to BU's campus. And then I think the adrenaline wore off and I'm like, I can't walk. And then I'm like, I can't even get in my lab. And I told her, can y'all go grab a chair?
I just feel like
Get
this
me
is
a taxi.
And was this before and everyone had a phone to tape how embarrassing this was?
Yeah, pretty much.
Good.
Yep. It just
Pre-Instagram hilarity.
And I'm like, I had to call my friend to go in the main building to get me a chair so I could sit outside and wait till we got a taxi for me to go to the hospital. It was so silly.
I feel like this is like the best story you could possibly tell.
I couldn't even realize I tore it, and that's the thing. And it was like, and they couldn't believe I was leaving, and I was like, I didn't know I tore it.
But all right. So Olympic judge here. That's a good reason to tear your ACL, like getting your black belt to kill a man 9 ways from Sunday with science and physics at the same time. Good job,
man. It was.
But it's I just stumbled on a curb. No, that's a lame excuse. But getting your black belt.
But sadly, I never finished and never got the black belt because I had a year of rehab, and then I left Boston to go to Ann Arbor, and then there was no place really near me. So, Yep. So it's a dream deferred, but now I'm too old and lax ligaments, so I can't really do any martial. I can't do jiu-jitsu anymore, but it is okay. I do miss throwing people.
I was gonna say, like, that must be that's crazy adrenaline. I've never been in the fight in my whole life. Like the idea of martial arts just kind of scares that my body could be capable of these things if I spent the time to train.
But I really, really miss throwing people. I know that sounds crazy, but
I got a friend who's he worked for the WWE. So he just loved like for real. Like I know it's acrobatic entertainment, whatever, but there's nothing like the adrenaline of throwing a guy.
Yep. And you just get used to it, and and then you get used to getting thrown. But yeah, it's a feeling. It is fun. It's like that's when you can let the stress out.
Yeah.
And you when you get really controlled, you can do it without breaking them.
So we were talking before the show that you live on the elusive but now ultimately too well known Roosevelt Island. How'd you get there?
Yes. Ironically, when I was doing my PhD in Boston, I used to try to escape the city whenever I could. So I would either come down here where I had friends in Brooklyn or go up to Montreal. And
that's a culture shift.
Yeah. And I was trying to work on my French, so it was kind of okay. But when I knew after my postdocs, I had a job in Philly, and then I got the job that was up here. And so I asked my friends, where should I look at living in the city? Because they were about to start making us go back to work because it was sort of the back end of
COVID, yeah.
The main part of COVID. And then my friends, I was looking at, Long Island City, Queens. And they said, well, why don't you look at Roosevelt Island? I had never heard of it, even though I'd come a lot. There's one of the things, if you don't go over to that part and routinely go that you just don't know it's there.
Yeah.
But I'm glad
It's
they
like
told
Governor's Island. Like there's a thing down there.
Yep, but I'm glad my friends told me that. So when I came and looked, I looked at 3 places on Roosevelt Island and 5 out in Queens, and the place in Roosevelt Island was about the same price as the stuff further out, but it was much nicer. So I said, well, we'll just pop down here. So that is in essence how I ended up on Roosevelt Island.
And I've been there. We were discussing before the show. My grievance for people who live there is that you can only get to Queens by walking or a bus. You can't, there's like no land bridge to Manhattan.
Yep. You either walk or drive or scooter it. So the only way off is to Queens. So even if you need to drive to Manhattan, you have to go to Queens, go all the way down and come back. I think it's the FDR. Is it the FDR bridge? The one up there at 60?
Yeah, the Ed Koch Bridge.
Yeah, that's the one.
The 59th Street Bridge.
Yep, that's the one.
The Queensboro Bridge.
Yeah, but if you by car, there is no fast way. So if you have to get an Uber, like I had cut my thumb once, and that was like, and then there's no more, there's no more urgent care on Roosevelt Island.
No?
Nope.
That seems like a miss.
Yeah, I think that place closed maybe 2+ years ago. I was like,
well, better than that old like Pox Hospital down the way too, right?
Oh, that's still hanging on by the threads. The geese hang out down there in the cat shelter.
Yeah, that was we're drifting for the listeners. There's one person listening. Just your Zagat guide to Roosevelt Island. I would encourage people to just, if you're in town, it's one of the secret fun tourist places, but people who live there hate the tourists. So try not to go during tourist season. They will throw things at you.
But yeah, the south end of the island is really nice. There's FDR Park, but also from the south end of the island, you can also see the United Nations. So you get some really great pictures from the south end of the island.
All right, let's take a quick break. I want to come back and talk about why the word STEM has 2 M's. So we'll be right back with Dr. Eugene Manley. So I wasn't kidding. You in your bio, your credentials, STEM has 2 M's. I've heard of STEAM, which my kids are in high school. I have boy-girl twins. They're sophomores. They do STEAM stuff. What is STEM with 2 M's? Science, technology,
engineering, math, and medicine.
Medicine. Okay. Wow. Okay. Good.
So in essence, they're similar variants of the same thing. It's, you're just trying to get kids engaged in science and other aspects. So do you need the other M? No. Do you need the A? That's, depends on what you're doing. But that's really what the second M means. It is nothing nefarious or trying to change norms. It's just, medicine. And so, but a lot of the work I do with the nonprofit is trying to get more diverse kids into STEM fields. Letting them know they can go into these fields. 2, helping them navigate those degrees and degree transitions through mentorship and training so we can get them in the workforce. So then we can have more people that can do work that impacts underserved and marginalized populations, because they often are the ones that are most excluded from the workforce and care delivery and care decisions.
I mean, I wasn't surprised by what I read on in some of your content. Medical racism, it's there. I mean, It's one thing to have toxic masculinity.
Yep.
With all the white guys, I think they know better than everyone. Mm-hmm. I work a lot with nurses, nurse navigation, and social workers and child life specialists in my space. And I don't want to cast a broad brush, but it's still quite that sentiment. And then you toss in, you happen to be
Black.
I was going to say a larger than life individual, which is true. We are both in that sense. But I mean, I wanted you on the show, not for that obvious reason, but it's definitely something that is another level of ether that shouldn't exist at all, that affects the way patients experience medicine and the next generation trusts medicine.
Yep. And I saw this, so from even before my own experience with medical racism, I just saw how my mom and sibling mom was treated navigating healthcare as I was growing up. And, and she died in January of this year, but she had diabetes. She was bedridden. She had to have a series of amputations. But the hospital staff, particularly the night staff, were so just mean, condescending. Like they wouldn't give her her phone so she could call my sister. And, and she wanted her lights left on at night because because she had this averse fear of darkness because, she had trauma probably from getting chased by dogs when she was getting, and all the stuff in the 60s she dealt with the police and dogs. And so, but they were just so condescending and rude and they just would take no accountability. I remember one day there was someone apparently in her room feeding her that was not hospital staff. And I was like, huh?
Who was that?
Don't know.
What?
Yep.
Some rando was feeding your mom in the hospital?
Yep.
Feeding her what?
I guess her breakfast. I was like, and my mom was, partially blind or pretty much I was like, what? And like they have no control and they didn't really want to address the issue. That was one thing I did elevate up at the hospital, but there's only so much you can do when you are over here and your family's in Detroit. But she dealt with so much discrimination and racism. And then with my own foot surgery at Mount Sinai, which I will never set foot in that hospital again.
Not a sponsor.
I'll never set foot in that hospital because, I had a slip and fall fracture at the end of December, just going in the side entrance of my apartment building. It was heavily raining and I'm just walking and I don't know, out of blue, I just went down and the way I was going to fall.
Wait, was your ACL healed by then?
Oh, my ACL was healed because the ACL was like 2011.
Okay, so I'm just trying to correlate.
Yeah,
it wasn't like just a double.
So it wasn't a double. So, but I fractured it. And so I was in a boot for like the first 6-7 weeks. And the fracture healed, and then the orthopedic surgeon was like, okay, now let's take care of the rest. There was a lot of damage in the foot. Part of it was from the slip and fall, but there was a lot of other residual old damage in there. So he had to do reconstructive surgery.
Wait, were you taken seriously? Is this a situation where a black man walks in and they assume X, Y, and Z?
No, the fracture was fine. It was after the surgery.
Tell me.
So the surgeon, loved him, Chair Badiges. He was awesome. Him and his residents, I have no issue with them at all. We had a comprehensive plan. He knew I had a biomechanics background. So I said, look, all I asked after my surgery is, can we get me skilled nursing because I live alone? I just can't navigate my apartment because when I was in the cast, the splint for the first week, without the boot and 2 crutches, I could barely do anything. So now you're going to have me non-weight bearing with extreme pain in this foot. I said, I can't be in my house because I can't cook, I can't clean, I can't navigate because if both hands are on a walker or a scooter handles and I have the other one on a either dangling or on a scooter, that means I only have one leg with all the pain. So I said,
you asked for like in-home help.
So I asked actually for skilled nursing for the first 3 to 4 weeks, just so I could actually just
live your life and do your things.
Heal and then get somewhere where I could go home. He was okay with that. We had no problem with that. I didn't get done with surgery until like maybe 9:30 p.m., which means I didn't get out of step down until almost midnight. So nobody called my proxy, which I had a proxy list who lived in Florida. And then I got to the room around 1 a.m. And he said, before he said, we can't get you a placement by tomorrow, which was Friday, because, no one's going to do a placement on Friday. So we'll work on it on Monday. And he said, well, we'll get PT to come in and do an assessment to make for skilled nursing. And that's where it all went downhill because that PT came in Saturday morning, had horrible bedside manner, could tell she didn't want to listen. And then I could tell she wanted to be racist. I was going to hold my tongue, but then she just said, well, you got to use this walker and you got to stand up and do this. And it was the scariest thing in my life. Because one, I'm non-weight bearing. So why are you trying to make me use a walker while I'm non-weight bearing? But she had horrible bed. And she was like, you have to do this. And then she lied to my face because she said, you got to do this. And then in the charts, she wrote, I read this 3.5 weeks later, patient has no pain and can ambulate.
Oh, God.
Now, mind you, I'm in this hospital. The nerve block hasn't even worn off yet. And I'm supposed to be non-weight bearing for 6 weeks, but you're saying I have no pain and can ambulate. So you want me to hop on this walker, which means this leg that has surgery is dangling ungodly amounts of pain every single step. But because I did jujitsu, I'm not saying it, but I'm in ungodly high amounts of pain. But I verbalized this, but she just didn't want to listen. So she made whatever up she wanted. It was the most horrible thing. And then they kept lying in my charts in that hospital. I had a nurse that evening come through at 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, try to give me a discharge notice. I said, I'm not signing this because, when you're on Medicare, they try to get you Medicaid. They try to get you out fast.
Right.
But they wanted me to give me this notice and I'm supposed to sign it. And then if you sign it, though, you have to do an appeal with insurance by 12 p.m. the next day. Now, it is Saturday at 6:30 p.m. There's no way I'm going to reach insurance on Sunday at noon. And then there were 3 different numbers for insurance. Like, which one am I supposed to call?
Right.
You didn't circle these. I said, I'm not signing this. And then she signed it. Patient refused to sign and then put the relationship itself and a date. And then I called my proxy. Then my proxy called and bitched at her. It's like, nope, this is not happening. Like, that's illegal. Like, he's in no shape to do this. Like, he's not seeing a caseworker or social worker. You can take that back. Nope, you're not giving that to him. Like, that is not acceptable. So I'm glad she said, because I was naively thinking they were going to listen to me.
What are the odds of that happening?
Because I just have never experienced it. I'm like, they're completely ignoring every single thing I've said.
And making shit up.
Yep. And so she gave this to me at 6:30 p.m. But you look at the paper she gave me, it was written that they had given it at 11 a.m. So yeah, that day I'm like,
So all of this just further informed you.
Yes. And then, we have the hospital list. Monday morning comes in, asks about my ability to pay for skilled nursing. I'm like, that's not your job at all. And at this point, I'm frustrated, angry.
You're also a literate patient, too, and they hate that.
And I'm in so much pain. Like, I had lost my voice, which is almost unheard of.
Yeah.
But I had no voice, so I really couldn't even speak up and argue like I wanted to. And then I'm glad I stayed long enough because I ended up spiking a fever. And then that was allowed me to see that the initial blood thinner was the wrong thing because apparently my liver enzymes went way out of whack. And if they had sent me home, I would have been dead because it took us 2 days to figure out what was going on. They had to do ultrasound and all this stuff. Found out it was a blood thinner. So we switched to blood thinner. I was fine. But, one day they came by, bumped my leg 3 times. That's the only day I yelled at them. And then they wrote in the chart, patient's aggressive. And like,
oh, God.
So, yeah. And then when I discharged, they said, oh, well, you were denied skilled nursing. The reason it was denied was because the PT and OT wrote in the chart, patient can ambulate, even though the surgeon clearly said patient cannot because he did the surgery. But because PT wrote that and wouldn't change their mind because they apparently can make the decisions in a hospital, I lost. And then the insurance person asked the doctor, why didn't you appeal sooner than 5 days? He said, well, I've tried to get PT to give me another consult for 5 days and they never answered him. So they iced the surgeon out of the medical records. So he couldn't even get in the records. He had to have his residents show him what was being charted. So, yeah, so they were really trying to make some kind of example out of me, but they epically failed.
Well, good on you.
And all I can say is it taught me, if they did that to me, who knows how to advocate? How many poor, Black, underserved patients are getting pushed out of the hospital unnecessarily, saying they're, alert when they are clearly not of sound mind, and then they're just getting lied in their records and they don't even know it's happening.
Yeah, this is a real thing that happens.
A lot. And people don't believe it. Like, it happens a lot. And I'm sitting there like, I'm really experiencing this. And this is my problem. Now, literally, I'm still in pain for a good 6 weeks, but finally around week 4 is when I could read the charts. And I was like, we started teaching people, like, you got to file with the hospital system. You got to file with insurance. You got to file with the Office of Professional Standards. You have to file with the joint accreditation. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. And I made a series about the whole thing on YouTube. It's the only YouTube thing I have. And I made a couple blog posts about, how do you address medical racism?
Well, we will link to all of that in the episode notes, but that's a good pivot to some of the narratives I've seen you write about is something called measurable equity, right? So the question I have is like, what is one metric, if there could even be one, of measurable equity that everyone kind of pretends exists, but really doesn't?
Well, when you think of equity,
it's a broad word these days.
Yeah. So so many people mistake. There's 2 things that happens. People mistake that when you're doing health equity, you have to do every single thing. No, that is not reasonable. That is not rational. But you have to figure out what the problem is you can address. and then develop a solution for that, and then measure if you made an impact so that disparate group, and disparate does not mean poor or black or underserved. It could be any difference is a disparity, but can you bring that disparate group up to the same outcome as the majority? So it could be we have differences in, black skin versus white skin for pulse oximeters. So then you have to redo the pulse oximeters. It could be we want to get more black patients in our clinical trials, which is often what they say. And we still see horrible representation. And then what steps are you taking to do this? Do you have a diverse clinical trial staff? Almost guaranteed it's not.
Well, let me interrupt, because that's a question that I've been sort of circling for 20 years now, is that representation in the conversation is just as important as trust in understanding what they're getting themselves into.
Exactly. And so if you don't have people from those communities at all the levels along a trial, why would people come do your trial? And just based on my own experience in this hospital system that claims they're, a joint commission accredited hospital, why would I go do a trial in your place when you treated me like detritus when I was at my worst? We think about, Henrietta Lacks and other stuff, but when people have lived experience to this day with hospital systems, why would I ever go do a trial at your place?
Right.
So your solution has to be related to what you can fix, and I would say fix, what you can address. So is it you want to get more diverse trial staff, or you go upstream in lung cancer? We did some stuff where we looked at the cell lines we have that really form the basis for our clinical and translational stuff. We found 800 cell lines. 390 were Asian, 200 were white, 31 were black, none were Hispanic, Native American, Alaska Native. And of those 31 black cell lines, only one was a non-small cell lung cancer. So this is the only thing you have that basically sets the basis for most of your biomarker and your translational stuff and your trials. If we don't have representation, there is no way that anything you create is going to work in these patients that have the higher incidence and mortality.
Yeah, and we have a lot of friends in common. I'm reading here you're with the longevity. I've been friends with of longevity, Andrea, for like 20 years. AACR, I've been involved with Rick and Sam for 20 years. I was on a PCORI survivorship thing through Hopkins for a couple of years. The National Lung Cancer Roundtable, Health Equity. Like, you've been, I would say, appropriately kind of poached to be part of all of these. I mean, do you feel like your voice is heard in all of these consortiums? Or is it all a lip service bullshit veneer?
Let's put it like this. If you aren't in the room, you can't advocate for people that aren't there.
Well done.
So you still, whether you believe stuff is moving or not, you still have to be there advocating, because no one else is necessarily going to take the mantle for them.
I have a horror story I learned about. It's something in cardiology years ago, that they were bringing a new cardiology drug to market, and they were so proud of the diversity in the trials. And it was like, they had like 11 European countries. I'm like, you fucking kidding me? That's not diversity. That's geographical diversity.
Yes.
And they were so proud of it. And like, then there was a whole uproar because clearly it didn't work in the black community and it had all these adverse events because you weren't part of the process. It's befuddling that this is still something that goes on, but I completely understand why.
Yep. But if you look at who was doing the research, who gets funded, which populations are studied, and then who's making the decisions, it sort of reflects what you see. And unfortunately, the people that need the help the most are the ones that often are left behind. And then they're scrambling post-market analysis, or, how do we get in the community? If you come in only for your trial, and that's the only thing you do, you're not getting the community.
Right.
You have to flip how you think about what you're doing. If you just want the quick win, equity is never a quick win. It is not a sprint. It's a sled, and you are really trying to take pickaxes and crawl to make incremental progress. But you have to go in those communities and not just talk about your job. You have to talk about other things you're doing. Try to educate them on other things. Make them feel like they can trust you and see you. If you can't spend that time doing that, and if you can't give them the results of the trial, why would they ever want to trust you?
Damn straight. I want to spend the rest of the show talking about the mentorship you're doing now with like the eager young minds of tomorrow. I'm just inherently curious about the receptivity to science. You are clearly a trust bridge for these community members to believe that this is something they can aspire to or leap into. Give me some success stories.
Well, part of this is we do an annual lung cancer intervention summit that brings together patients, caregivers, survivors that are often Black, but also diverse. But we bring them in a space so they can learn more about the disease, learn how to advocate, and learn who is actually working on their behalf, either locally or nationally, so they can refer someone. But the other part of this is we bring in researchers, clinicians, public health, nurses, payers, hospital systems, some pharma to talk about interventions that they are actively doing or have done that are actually reducing disparities, reducing inequities, and or improving outcomes. So every year we have a session on mentorship and training programs. So this year we had someone from Henry Ford Hospital talk about the high school program they had. We had Dr. Price from the National Medical Association talk about the Cobb Scholar Program. And then we had a doctor from UIC talk about, oh my God, I forgot what the topic. It's a name, physiatrist, I believe is what.
Physiatrist.
Yes.
I don't know why I knew that, but it's physiatrist.
And so, how there are very few Black people in that space, and they're slowly getting more, but just how you can do that. But that's one area. So how do we show the different layers of mentoring? But often because I have a lot of friends that are teachers, I get asked to speak at STEM events, and I love doing this. So I spoke at the NYU College and Career Lab last year, and they asked me to do a little 20-minute presentation on like my background, 15 minutes on my research, and work with the kids on a project. And so I had them work on a project where sort of like my lung cancer summit, I said, okay, let's say you're going to develop an event. So I really talked them through event planning, business development, marketing, and said, where do you want to have it? What's the topic? Who's the audiences? What kind of speakers do you want? Think about the 3 locations. What's the price? What you kind of report out. And then it was very interactive and they loved it. The most interesting thing I did is some kids in Wisconsin, anatomy teacher asked me to speak to their kids about biomedical ethics. And
yes, that's an issue.
And it was very interesting because I had never done a talk like this. So I did a part of this background, and these were a lot of inner city. Well, they were diverse high school kids, and they understood the part about my background. They really found that fascinating. But when I gave them the story of why we technically have medical protections in place, I talked about, it was the Flexner study that basically closed 5 of Black med schools way back in the early 1900s. And he was not really a medical doctor. But because of those 5 schools closing, we have a massive deficit of Black doctors that we would have today. We talked about, syphilis studies, the Guatemala STD studies. We talked about Holmesburg prison. We talked about
some deep-rooted anthropology there.
Yep. Even the stuff in Texas just happened last year or the year before. University of North Texas, their willed body program. And so I took them through a story chronologically. These are just things that we know. Talked about the Mississippi appendectomy. And these kids were like, this stuff actually happened? I said, yes.
Have you met this country?
And they were so shocked because, they're so young. They're not used to really getting told this because we glance over a lot of stuff. And I said, these are things that actually happen. They said, what? Because some of them want to go into medicine. I said, that's fine, but just be aware of what you are going into, and that there's still a hierarchy and structure, unfortunately, you have to deal with to get your degree, to get to finally do the stuff that you think will impact your community.
Yeah. Well, we have to wrap the show, but I want to end with my what I call the bonus round. What I do is I feed my ChatGPT, which I fully trained and tamed for almost a year now, with information about my guest. And then I opine and wax poetic to it about how I feel about the show and what I want to get out of this conversation. By the way, you need to come back. We need to do a show just on Roosevelt Island. But the question that I asked Chad is, if my guest were a Netflix series,
oh Lord,
who would play you as an amalgam of 3 pop culture, Gen X, Gen Y individuals, fiction or nonfiction? You don't have to answer. I have the answers. You're not going to guess. Well, you might guess. I mean, I kind of
let's hear these guesses.
Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh my my God.
But it gave a reason why. It's not listening. It said you are a science communicator who translates complexity into something the public can actually use.
Yep, I'll take that.
You are Jordan LaForge, which I think is the greatest LeVar Burton of all time. There are many LeVar Burtons, but Jordan LaForge is the best LeVar Burton. Engineer, problem solver, always scanning for the flaw no one else sees.
That is...
And you are Morpheus from The Matrix. A mentor who teaches people to see the world behind the world.
I can't disagree with any of those. Wow.
Yeah. So I say that's an A+ right there.
Wow. I would take that. I would take that gladly.
Well, all right. I have 9,000 credentials to outro Dr. Eugene Manley, but the least of which STEMM and Cancer Health Equity Foundation founder and CEO, creator and host of the Lung Cancer Intervention and Health Equity Summit. Links to all these in the episode notes. Former director of community engagement at Longevity, former director of scientific program at Lung Cancer Research Foundation, former assistant director of corporate alliances at the American Association for Cancer Research. There's 11 more, but I think you really make me feel like a poser. And I just want to say thank you for braving the waves. And it's like swimming in shit, but doing it because if you didn't do it, it wouldn't get done.
Yep, my whole philosophy is not what can I do for myself, but what can I do for others? And maybe it's just because I've seen what it's like to not have anything or be excluded. So how can I make sure you can learn or advocate or know where you can go in your life? So,
right. Dr. Eugene Manley, everyone, thanks for coming on the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
Out of Patience with Matthew Zachary is a production of Matthew Zachary Worldwide. The executive producer is Matthew Zachary. It is mixed and edited by Kyle Moore. If you like the show, ratings and reviews are always welcome wherever you get your podcasts. If you have guest suggestions or would like to learn more about sponsorship opportunities, email podcast@matthewzachary.com. For more information about Matthew Zachary and Matthew Zachary Worldwide, visit matthewzachary.com.